Morning everyone. So I'm here today on 18th Green with our course manager Paul Hampsey, who's been with us 2.5 years now, Paul. And we've done quite a lot of, you guys have done a lot of work in that time. But I thought this would be an opportunity for the members perhaps to get a little bit, to find out a little bit more about your plans and possibly to get to know you a little bit more as well. So before we talk about the golf course, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do when you're away from
golf and away from work, I suppose. I'm big on keeping fit, you know, it's a big part of my life is keeping fit. Had back problems back in the day from the graft, from greenkeeping, and I find that running actually is one of the things that keeps all the stiffness at bay, so fitness is a big thing for me.
Yeah.
Out with that, I've got a young family, so I try.
You know you've got a young family.
So I try my best to spend as much time, because greenkeeping over the years, you know, in my career has been a lot of sacrifice. So it's good to now have a fine balance where we've got the annualised hours and we put the work in when the weather's right, and I get the time back with the family. So that works well for me. Out with that, sports fan, as you know, and football is my main priority.
I won't ask any more.
I won't ask any more than that. But out with that, obviously golf. I don't get to play anywhere near as much as I used to. You know, it was golfing that got me into the industry in the first place. But ever since then, it's been promising myself every year that I'm going to work in a handicap. Just doesn't happen with the hours that we keep, because when the conditions are right for golf, it's right for doing so much work when it goes. So that takes priority, you know.
I know we obviously go out and play a few holes whenever we get a chance, but we've been playing quite a lot here. Have you any favourite holes at East Ren?
Favourite holes? I wouldn't say a favourite hole, but what I would say is the favourite tee shot, I would say, is the 8th. You know, such an inviting fairway there with the shape of the fairway. Although it could be enhanced a wee bit with some bunkering, but I won't go down that road just now. But out with that, I'd say the approach shot at 14, you know, the risk and reward of that. I like the ditch shape, you've got to consider it. And short, I've got to say the par 313, I think we've definitely improved that with the bunkering positioning. So those 3 shots are my favourite. I wouldn't say a favourite hole.
You've been here, I mean, you've been at the club, but it's 2.5 years now, and there's a lot been going on in that time. Obviously, like you say, the reconstruction of 13th, quite a lot of greens drainage. What have been some of the key challenges, do you think, during that time? I mean, you've obviously come from, I suppose, from a links course to, you know, a parking course.
I would say probably the biggest challenge would be prioritising that, you know, around the ever-changing weathers, you know. I think we set out, we identified a whole host of problems and development that would really enhance the course, but greens drainage was always going to be priority. These greens now 100 years old, any drainage that was ever put in them just isn't adequate anymore, and with you look at 2.2 metres of rain for last year and then the snow and ice on top of that, they just don't cope to come out the summer. They're going to struggle this year. So we done a trial last year, and we done the 3rd and the 13th, we pipe drained them, and that's the primary drainage, and on top of that we'll go to secondary drainage. But even that drainage alone, if you just compare them to some of the greens that haven't been done now, the grass coverage for this time of year is exactly where we want it to be. So that has just made us think that we would just like to get all the greens up to that spec as soon as possible. You know,
I was going to ask you that. Obviously you've tackled those greens and done the greens drainage. So going forward, what does that mean in terms of plans for how you plan to do them over the next few years?
I've got to say this year's changed things. You know, off the back of 2 really harsh winters, we've seen how the greens have come out of that. The priority, like I say, was always greens drainage, and what we were going to try and do was just do 2 a year and tie in the complex where we rebuild the bunkers, because the bunkers are so far behind as well. There's no liner in them. We've just, aesthetically, they don't look well with the shapes. So we wanted to try and cram in when the greens are out of play, try and do the bunkering, any tee levelling, and maybe path work. I've got to say that's proven difficult, you know, given the winters that we've had. But having a look at the condition of the greens turf this year, we think we really need to prioritise and get the greens drainage in first, because as much as this course has got huge potential for new features and nice new bunkers, the greens are a priority, and we'd like to get them up to the same spec as soon as possible. So I'm thinking we need to sit down with the board and see what the finances are like, but we're thinking of maybe trying to squeeze 4 or 5 in from September, end of September to December, and that gets them back in play early March. And we do it over a course of 3 years, and then we've got all the greens done, and then we can start looking at really enhancing the course out with that, you know.
In terms of the greens drainage, I mean, obviously from our point of view, when we look at it and you see the holes like 3 and 13, the seems to be a much better grass coverage, but
Yeah.
from an agronomy sort of point of view, what is the main difference in terms
Well,
of
yeah,
playability?
agronomic, it's simple science, to be honest. It's just when there's no drainage in the greens and you've got low pockets, and when it's under that amount of water and stress for so long, it drowns the grass, you know, so it just suffers. And when you've got drainage in the green, it takes that relief away. So even though it rains for months on end, as soon as the rain stops, it drains away.
Yeah.
It doesn't drain away, it sits underwater, it doesn't get the air, the thatch builds, it's just one problem onto the next. So, you know, that was a trial at 3 and 13, but now that we see the grass coverage on that this early on,
Yeah.
it's really, it's made us, it's decided we're going to push the greens drainage, I think, a wee bit quicker.
And last year, I suppose, was slightly unique in terms of the amount of golf we had out here
Yeah.
because of the pandemic, and you know, been one of the few things that people can do.
Yeah.
Has that had an impact, do you think, in terms of, I suppose, budgets going forward and the amount of work for you guys to take on?
Yeah, it has, absolutely. And again, it's way back to the start. I mean, the infrastructure of the place, you know, the lack of walkways from tees to fairways and the little bottlenecks. You know, so we done well this year. We get some of the AstroTurf. We get 400 metres out across 4 holes, and that's made a huge difference. You know, it means we can bottleneck everyone away from these lone areas.
Yeah.
So that's a big part of the plans going forward. But yes, it has put a lot of wear on the course and the greens for that matter. But it's a good problem to have. We can't complain at having a lot of golf out. We just need to reevaluate how we're going to manage that, because traffic management, we try our best with that, but you kind of run out of areas to go.
Yeah.
So a big part and a big thing will be the AstroTurf path. We plan to put that out as far as we can, you know, without encroaching play, and that will take a lot of weight off these high traffic areas, you know.
And you obviously, I know you're quite keen to mention how hard the team has worked over the last, well, since you've been here, but in particular over the last year as well.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I must say that's one thing coming in. You're apprehensive. You don't know how the team's going to be, because I'll be honest, I do put a bit of workload on myself included, and you wonder, are they going to be up for that challenge? I've got to say they've wholeheartedly, they've been right up for it from the word go, and I think the biggest factor is I'm bringing them in the plans. You know, I'm listening to what they're saying, because these guys have got a lot of good ideas, so I think that's helping their motivation, you know, the fact that they're part of the plans. So no, it's working well, and I can't thank them enough. They've been brilliant for me.
I know a lot of the members are saying hello to them and stuff like that around the golf course. And, we will try and get a bio of them all as well, so the members maybe can put names to faces as well.
Yeah, they'll love that.
I'm just looking around the 18th green, Paul. Obviously, you were coming out of quite a wet period.
Yeah.
And there's quite a few pitch marks around and that type of thing.
Yeah.
I think it's worth explaining to the members the impact it has from not repairing pitch marks, so that they can, you know, try and
I
get
wonder if we can
everyone
actually
to buy
find
into
one.
it.
If you just maybe home in it, here's a pitch mark here that hasn't been repaired. You can see the indentation there, and you can also see the turf, the grass has suffered from that. What you get if you don't repair that, what you get is when any moisture or any rain, it will sit in that little hollow, that little bit of turf will suffer, and then all you'll get is you'll get moss and maybe annual meadow grass coming in, all the things you don't want, and all it takes is just to level it out anyway. There's different ways of doing it, just to level it out, and that makes such a difference. It just means nothing that you don't want can invade that space. You know, when you leave anything open on the greens like that, then all the undesirable grasses like moss and annual meadow grass and weeds can start to invade, so it's important that everybody does that, you know.
Okay, thanks Paul, thanks very much.
No problem.
Hope the members have enjoyed that.
Cheers.